Alright guys, this is just pretty much a motorcycle here on the floor. I've got a lot of these large totes like this, and I've got one in my shed and there's not very many parts in it. I think there's like 4 or 5 little small parts in it. Then I had this one, it's been buried in my hobby room in there, and it's about 3/4 full, so I'm going to mix them together because I need a tote for something else. Some Monte Carlo parts that I've restored. So I'm actually going to transfer a bunch of parts to the totes, but I thought while everything was out I'd go ahead and do just a video of my motorcycle. I do have an older video on my channel of the GPz 305, and it's pretty much a story of me crashing one and stuff. Anyway, I'm building the bike. It's a 1983 GPz 305, and it's identical to the one I had when I was a kid, when I was 15. That's actually me on my GPz 305. This would have been about 1987. It's pretty much a gray area because it was either 86 or 87, but I'm pretty sure it was 87. I was 15. But anyway, a friend of mine, his dad was into photography real good, and he took a picture of me on my bike. It didn't cost me nothing, it was just him wanting to do it. Anyway, I'll get down to it. Here is I have a local vinyl shop that screen prints, and they're very good at what they do, man. And they duplicated all my logos and everything. I took my tank and my side covers and everything in, and they replicated it in size and everything. They even did the logo that says, like .3 or whatever, brake fluid for the master cylinder. And then here's the rear panel that goes on the back. It says Kawasaki Unitrack. But they did a good job. I'm very happy with it. I'm pretty much going all original on the design of the bike, but there is a few small subtle touches I'm kind of putting my street rod style into it, I guess you could say, because I've always built old cars. I'm not much of a motorcycle builder per se. I do love motorcycles, I've just never actually built one. So this is pretty much going to be my first motorcycle to restore and customize a little bit. My mom did my seat for me a few years ago. They have pleats kind of like this, and she pretty much kind of replicated it. There's a very large upholstery supply, automotive upholstery supply in Tulsa that I have an account at. And I definitely want to do black, but the factory one has a really heavy grain, and I just never did like that heavy grain on there. So I went and got marine grade vinyl, and went with a smaller grain, and it's really, really soft. Really like that material, and it wasn't very expensive. I don't remember how much it was, but anyway, so she did my seat for me, and it's ready to go. Another thing I did was I have some crystal H4 headlights. It was actually in a tubbed out S10 pickup that I bought and drug in. The headlights were new in the box, and I tried to put one of those headlights in the factory GPz bucket, and it just didn't work. It didn't fit in there. So I went to salvage. I got an S10 headlight bucket and ring. This is from like an early 80s S10. And I modified the factory GPz headlight bucket for this to fit in there and bolt in. And it's still adjustable. So that's pretty cool. I'll paint the ring and sandblast this and paint it black. Anyway, it'll give me a modern style looking headlight in the bike, which I think is a big design change for the front when you're looking at it, because the bike does have it has a small fairing up here, and I just think it'll kind of help out with the look of everything. I bought pretty much everything for this bike new except the front brake hose, and I was planning on buying a black chrome looking stainless one. Just so it kind of goes away, but it's still braided stainless. So I need to get one of those one of these days. But I bought all new fork seals and grips and vent hoses, and there's O-rings for the carburetor stuff. I just kind of went nuts on it when I went and bought a bunch of parts for the bike. It did run when I brought it in. The guy actually delivered it to me for $350, and it ran, but it didn't run great. So after a couple of weeks of cussing and griping and having the carbs on and off 50 times, I finally got them cleaned and working. But on my paint on the bike, this is the factory colors, the red, the silver, and the blue. I matched the red up to the T at the paint shop, so the red is identical. It's non-metallic, it's just plain red. But I went with a little bit darker gray. It's killer gray pearl that I'm putting on instead of silver. So it's kind of more along the lines of the center stripe there. And the blue, I went with it was a BMW color, lots of pearl metallic in it. And anyway, it's a little bit brighter, more brilliant of a blue instead of this dark, drab, plain blue. But other than that, it's pretty much going to look original. I'm going to do the, same, the stripes will be the same. But I'm going to put everything on, stripes and everything, all in base. And then I'll put the decals on and everything, and then I'm going to clear it all. And then I'll sand and buff all the pieces. But this side cover is actually broken. It was just one I took up there and they copied the logos on. But anyway, I got lucky on eBay and found a new in the box Kawasaki Speedometer surround. All the lettering there where it says neutral, high beam, and stand was pretty much wore off of the bike. And it was all sun faded gray, and you know how plastic gets when it's been in the sun for years. Just kind of sloughs off, So I got lucky and I found that, and that'll be a big thing on there with all that crisp wording to have that looking brand new. It'll kind of, the bike will present well, I got a new ignition switch, so all the lettering on it was pretty crisp. And like I did on my Salon, my Oldsmobile Salon, I went with a transparent battery cable. It's actually an amplifier wiring kit that I bought at Walmart. It was the same gauge wire as the factory gauge battery cable, so I'll have it on there because it is visible. The bike's not, the engine's pretty much all exposed on the bike, so I want every detail I can get on it. I even bought a new Kawasaki boot for the lug that goes to the starter. I learned a lot messing with this little bike when I first got it. I tried putting pods on it and could not get that bike tuned, and just issue after issue after issue. And I ended up going and finding, it was like a big square sheet of the uni filter stuff, and I cut those to fit in the factory deals and put all the factory box back on, and the bike run great. Imagine that. I tried a jet kit and everything, and it just never would run right. But so anyway, I'm just putting the factory box back on it, and I'm going to be good with it. What's cool is there's an old Cycle World from 1983, and they take one of these bikes that was brand new, and they drilled the jets out and did a couple of little small things to it and got it running really good. And I actually went to my local tool supply and bought some index drill bits, and I drilled my jets out and did the same mods they did, and man, it made a world of difference. It started easier, it idled better, and overall just run better. It's pretty cool. Some old magazines, they always come in handy. I guess that's why I never throw my old magazines away. I've got Super Chevy from like 1999 to present. Even got a lot of Street Rodder magazines. Anyway, the windshield. This thing was just like of course it's dusty now, but it was pretty much the same as headlights in new model cars. You know how they get yellow and just sluffy looking, and it had scratches all in it. And I brought this thing back by DA sanding it wet with those sanding sponge pads, and I think it went all the way up to 4,000 or 5,000 grit, and then polished it, and that thing looks brand spanking new now. It was 2 inches longer, and I cut it down with a cut-off wheel and then resanded the edge, because the windshield to me on them bikes, they just were too tall. The 550 GPz had a little bit lower, which nothing interchanges off the bikes, but the windshield on those were a little bit shorter, and it just looked a little sportier to me, so that's why I did that. The only thing I don't have, and I have 3 GPz 305s now, 2 of them are just parts bikes. I do not have a tool kit, and it's like the only thing I'm missing, and I've been looking on eBay every once in a while, and I just never have found one. I don't necessarily need it, I just kind of wanted it to have it, you know. But the ignition switch cover here, you know how that plastic gets on them old motorcycles. It just turns to a gray color and it just sloughs off with your fingers. I sanded this down a little bit, and then I used Duplicolor bed liner in a can, aerosol, and I dusted it on there to get that fine grain on there so it wouldn't get too heavy, you know. Then I used that Sim brand Landau black plastic paint, spray paint, and put on there. And it looks pretty much brand new now. I even have some little stainless button heads that I'll polish to bolt it down. I've pretty much changed all the hardware out in the whole bike to a stainless button head or a socket cap. Like even the engine side covers and everything will have shiny polished stainless bolts in it. Just kind of trying to, you know, put a little detail into the car or the bike, you know, but I still want it to look original. Anyway, that's about it for everything in here. I got a brand new Kawasaki taillight from Kawasaki. I was surprised they still had those. I think these were the same as the bigger bikes. They all had the same taillight. But I bought new screws and I bought a new gasket. And you know, all that detail stuff to me, like screw heads. The screw heads that were in all the bikes' taillights, they've been on and off a dozen times, look like, and the screw heads were just stripped and burnt out. So I went and got all new ones. Anyway, this is the frame for that GPz 305. It's been hanging from my ceiling for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. It had a ton of dust on it. I got it down, blew it off. I did a few small things to it, like up here. They have some pretty ugly mounts up here, and the horns actually hang out here, and they're very visible. There's dual horns. So I built bracket, and it's all mounted underneath the fairing and out of sight now. So I cut those brackets off and ground everything smooth, so the tubes going down, there's nothing on them. What else? There's a latch back here for the seat, to unhook the seat to lift it up. And man, it had this big, goofy, long arm on it. So I cut it all down and remodified everything and welded a little tab. So basically a stop on there. And now you reach up under there with your finger and hit it. It's hidden behind the plastic now. But it had all kinds of bungee cord tabs and a helmet lock and just a bunch of crap on these rear frame rails. And I cut all those off and smoothed them out. And made my own brackets back here out of some angle. And I went with, they're off a Suzuki Bandit. I can't remember the year, 99 to early 2000s or something. And I think it's the same as the GSXRs maybe. Anyway, the blinkers look almost identical to the GPz factory ones, except they're just a little bit smaller, because the blinkers on these bikes are monstrous. And I didn't want any aftermarket little tiny ones, so I went with those. I've actually got a pair. I need to buy 2 more, and it seemed like they were like $60 a piece or something. So, hell, there's no telling what else actually that I'm going to need for this bike. But anyway, I'd planned originally, and I was kind of trying to clean up some of the nasty welding, and I was planning on, taking Bondo on my finger at all the weld seams, smooth them real nice, and then Bondo them up, and then make it all molded. But it'd take, hours to do that. I've got some parts I need to paint for my Monte Carlo and my 55 they're already in primer, and I just need to sand them down. And I'm just going to use some gloss black acrylic enamel single stage that I have here. So I thought I'd go ahead and spot prime some of these bare metal spots, and then after a while come out here and Scotch Brite the frame down real nice and go ahead and paint it and all those parts. I've got room in I call it my hobby room, but I have my computer and stuff in there, and pretty much some memorabilia and stuff like that in there. But I do have room to put a stand in there and go ahead and put the bike in there And so I thought maybe if the frame was painted, I might go ahead and take it in there and start bolting stuff back together in the evenings and stuff. It's not something I'm going to work on every single day. It's just I'd like to get it done. Anyway, so I think I'll go ahead and paint a few small parts, maybe today or tomorrow. I've still got body work to do on my Monte Carlo, and I do have some primering to do, so that's kind of what I thought. I might spot prime those parts when I primer all that. Just going to kind of do it when I'm doing everything else, you know. It's not like I'm going to stop and work on this. Anyway, that's my GPz 305 Kawasaki project that maybe one day in the next few years will be done.